Hello, welcome back to a small, considerable piece of slop! Okay, recently I asked you guys, what is your heart of iron for hot take? What would get you in the hot water, into the brazen bull? What's gonna get your toes tickling under the flames of the fire? See, obviously, Hearts of Iron 4, pretty popular nowadays. A lot of players with a lot of opinions. So I made the mistake of asking you guys what you think is a hot take for Hoi 4, and I got like 600 plus responses of hot takes, and I'm gonna go through them and see if you're correct, if I agree with you, or if you really do deserve to be thrown on the fire pit. Our first hot take from Gunmars is that AI is kept intentionally stupid because Paradox knows a competent AI would easily kick 95% of the player base's ass and they'd bitch non-stop about it. Now, I half agree with this sentiment. The half I do agree with is that the player base would bitch and moan non-stop every time that AI is made better. But honestly, I don't agree that AI is being intentionally kept stupid, because Paradox does do a little bit of work here and there, and every time they do update the AI, the player base does in fact bitch and moan non-stop. Because obviously, if you've not been around Hoi 4 since the beginning, there have been a big variety of different changes to the AI and its behavior. Most recently, we got a damn rung where the AI now does focused offensives, and when I actually was checking up on what people were saying around then, people were complaining. You were right about that one. It is a hot take in that sense, but I also don't give it to Paradox that they're I won't say competent enough to intentionally keep the AI stupid, but I do think they know their player base. So I agree half on this hot take. Paradox probably does know that they don't want their game to be super realistic, super hard for the player. Maybe if they do, they want that to be simply defined by a difficulty slider. But at the same time, I don't reckon they're doing it too intentionally. I think more realistically, they're probably just struggling to make the computer do what they want half the damn time. Next up, we have my hot take is that Hoi 4 is always best as a World War II simulator, instead of an early 20th century political sandbox. The entire economy and political economy is geared around the build-up to war. I really enjoy this part of the gameplay, and the systems that muck around with it tend to feel tacked on. Over the years, the game has been doing a pretty good job straddling the line between the two, but sometimes I worry the wrong lessons being taken. I don't know what plans Paradox has for Hoi 4, but I hope they keep it a World War II sim, and if they want a 20th century political sandbox, they make a Cold War game. Now, I know a lot of people are going to consider this a hot take, but I do actually agree for the most part. I do think this game is definitely stretching the limits of what's really capable for the framework that was laid out when the game was first released. And I do think it's nowhere near as egregious and to be shown when you look at other mods that really try to push what Hoi 4 is when you really can't do too much. I'm talking more about like the Millennium Dawns or the modern day mods that add all these things in that don't really add up, because in all, this is just a World War II simulator. There isn't too much in terms of, I'm assuming, game engine capabilities for a lot of the back end in terms of economy and stuff like that you could really implement, and what has been added is definitely stretching it. And whilst we are a few years away, maybe even up to 5 or 10 years away from Hoi 5 by looking at what Paradox's current release schedule is, I do think it is probably going to be a bit more flexible, because they've seen what Hoi 4 has turned into, and it does have clearly some demand. I don't think it's going to be like, a 1900s political simulator or anything like that, but I do think they're probably going to leave themselves a bit of flexibility in there, maybe move the start dates to 1933. I think that would make a bit more sense, and then potentially stretch some of the content past World War II into a World War III scenario, not a Cold War. But yeah, I do think that is a bit of a hot take for some people. I know a lot of people love mods in Hoi 4, and a lot of them, I do have to say, are really stretching the capabilities of Hoi 4. But yeah, I don't think this was too much of a hot take for some people, but probably a very hot take for a lot of other people. Special projects were fun for about a month, but now it definitely set in that the most of the coolest tech in the game are now locked behind an arbitrary time and resource wall that most minor nations will never be able to get past. I actually don't think this is a hot take. I think it's a realistic. I think it's a truth nuke. We're gonna have hot takes and truth nukes. This is a truth nuke. Because yeah, special projects were really fun for the, the first few times I played, but for the most part after then, you realize that the majority of them are either just so out of reach that they're not worth ever rushing or going for, or they're just not useful in the slightest. I did a little video recently where I actually went for a few that were a little bit out of the starting grasp. When I say starting grasp, I mean like the ones you can get just off the bat that are really useful, like flame panzers, military engineering vehicles. I did go for a bit of the ones out there, and they do actually play pretty fun. But at the same time, I do agree that maybe they could use a bit more of a rework. I don't think specifically for minor nations. Minor nations shouldn't be getting all this crazy tech unless you really hard focus into them, but I do think majors should have a bit more of a push, at least to do a few of the weird ones. Because whilst I do think a few of them, like all the nuke tech and a lot of the late game, like modern battleship, who uses modern battleship? But I do think some of the weird ones, like ice aircraft carrier, shouldn't be locked behind the 1940 carrier. I think that's a bit dumb. Especially because if you actually do go ahead and get that 1940 carrier, this takes like another 600 plus days or something to research, which is insane. So you really have to go out your way for, it's way more than 600 days, 1400 days to get this thing researched. That's ridiculous. Like, come on. Yeah, for something that was never even put in production, and I do get it wasn't put in production for a big reason, but does have a really weird niche use in the game, I think it should be made a little bit more accessible. If anything, make it be available from the start, but have that long time to get it produced, because then on top of that, you do actually have to go ahead and build them still. You do get, I think, one almost produced, but again, you have to finish producing it too, and you get this research. Yeah, I think Paradox should go back in, have a good look at some of these, and maybe make them just a bit more viable, so that, I know they want to add content post World War II, but for the most part, the world's already been conquered post World War II. There's not a lot of reason to play. So yeah, this hot take is definitely more of a truth nuke, and I think most people do agree with that. Oh, this one's gonna get people riled up. I hate designers. I get that a lot of people are stat junkies who want to min-max designs, but I hate opening up the designer for multiple types of things only to get a tiny bit more in a stat. I could also just build more artillery and it will work just as well. I wish there was a simplified version which brought back the plus and minus stat button and which disabled the designers. Okay, now when we're talking about designers, we are assumingly talking about the plain designers and stuff like that. And whilst I do agree, they can be a little bit annoying if you're a first-time player and you don't know what to build. But I think with the addition of the new preset button, I don't even really think about designers anymore, because a lot of the stuff I build is always the same, which in a way you could argue has made plain and designers and stuff like that completely redundant anyway, because if you're just building the same thing all the time and it always wins, what's the point? There's never any room for things to be different. And I think it could be said that maybe you should go ahead and disable them if it was an option, but I also think at the same time, just go ahead, look what the base presets are that always work. There's so many lists out there. Just shave them and you will never have to think about the designer ever again. Also think where there's a bit of wiggle room with designers, and they are 100% necessary, is on your boats actually, because there are useful things you can put on your boats, especially I guess if you're playing multiplayer and stuff like that, or if you just really want to get into Navy, which sounds like sacrilegious. Some people's ears are burning actually hearing that. But actually having like an inkling of getting into Navy, you do very quickly realize that for one, with your destroyers, you can have multiple different destroyer types. You can have ones that will actually have ASW on them, or you can have ones that you just want to go purely for stats and destroying other screens. Although this does kind of fall apart when you think about it, because all I ever build in single player at least is simply cruisers and destroyers, and for the most part I do just stack light attack, but sometimes I do have to think about that destroyer and see what I want to put on it, like ASW. So I think I do disagree with this hot take. I like designers. I think they add a bit more flair in the game, and whilst I think the most basic of tech, simply like planes and boats for the most part, I always use the same thing, but with tanks, I do always kind of change up my tanks actually. and I'm always using different stuff. It really just depends how I feel, but I do get how it could be a little bit overwhelming or annoying if you know, you're not really a stat junkie. But I do kind of like to, I like messing around with my little tanks. I like making my little designs and go beep beep on the map. Okay, now this one kind of links into what we were just talking about. I miss not having to research 50 billion different technologies to create tanks, planes, and ships. I like just researching the vehicle for that year and producing it, no malarkey needed. Now, I used to agree with this for the most part. It was a bit annoying looking at, say, this screen right here and being like, damn, where the hell do I start? I think it's more a given as well for tanks. It's a little bit annoying to have to like look at this and then look at the guns over here. It is kind of dumb that this is separated and linked to your anti-tank. I get that. That's kind of dumb. And I think it does scare a lot of people for the most part, actually separating their armed forces and doing anything bar just infantry and planes, because it's just way easier just to put down an infantry unit than look at the medium tank and be like, oh, well, now I need a gun for it. I need to go over there. But also I need to get myself armor, so I need to go over here. Yeah, I get it. That is annoying. But I also think at the same time, for the most part, you do actually start out with a lot of good tech, and a lot of stuff you look at over here are, for the most part, just upgrades. Because maybe it's just me, but for the most part, I don't even look at tanks until like super late in the game, which is probably not the way things went historically. The Germans definitely started the war with a whole bunch of tanks. I don't start with any for the most part. It's simply because I don't build for the current, I was build for the future. So I always wait to get all the tech that I think I'll need for the end game, not for what I need in the current. So I do agree in that regard that a lot of this is annoying to deal with, because you're always building for the future, you're not building for the current situation. So I really think Paradox should give more incentive for a lot of these early tanks and tank templates to be a bit more viable, or at least push you to build them, potentially make them a little bit cheaper. But they did make the light tanks more expensive recently because they wanted to try and fit armored cars into the meta, which did not work. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how a system like that could play out. Potentially having a few more of the early techs available, but at the same time, I do think if push comes to shove, you do start with enough to actually get out a few good tanks, but then they are made pretty obsolete, which, yeah, I guess that is how it went historically. But even if you could refit tanks a bit more efficiently, potentially refit, recycle old chassis or stuff like that, but at a reduced cost, something like that could work potentially to make people want to build more tanks early game. But we are kind of rambling now at this point. Let's go on to the next hot take. I do think that was like a 50% hot take, though. Not a truth nuke, but yeah, I do slightly agree. Okay, I don't think this is a hot take. Everyone hates the new portraits in the game, but I think the most egregious part about the portraits is they just look so uncanny valley compared to everyone else's. If they had actually gone ahead, updated everyone's portraits at the same time, it wouldn't be too bad. I mean, the hate would be like 5,000 times more at the beginning, but I think people would just come to accept them eventually. But when you actually look at like a lot of the old portraits, you know, they're okay, you know, it looks pretty cool, and then you accidentally click on hungry. I can't particularly describe why they look so bad. I'm not too sure what it is. Maybe it's just a bit too much color. A lot of the old ones are a lot paler if you look at the complexions on the face for the most part. It looks like they've just got a light shining right on their faces. So, you know, when you click on Horthy now and it looks like he's just got off the beach, it does look a little bit weird. And I do think, you know, we'll get used to these eventually, but you can definitely tell the stylistic difference. I don't know if they're going for more realism in the faces or something like that, or what exactly it is, but I think the Graveyard of Empire ones do a lot better than the goddamn Rung ones. Although, actually, saying that now, I'm clicking around, you know, some of them do look a little... a little bit too smooth in some scenarios, but at the same time, sometimes when I look at Turkey and like I just get absolutely, you know, look at Turkey, he's a little scary looking. Okay, hot take number 7. I don't think it's too much of a hot take. It's okay to play on civilian difficulty, especially when you're just trying to have fun. I do think civilian difficulty is, you know, a bit too easy. But if you look at civilian difficulty and you think, I want to play with this for the rest of my time on this game, you should potentially just move up at least to recruit and then try regular after a while. I think if you just got into the game, sure, have a game on civilian, maybe on recruit, but move up as you play. Because I do think a lot of the fun in this game actually does come from the small amount of challenge you can sometimes find yourself in. It's not often, okay, I won't lie, especially if you've got a lot of hours in the game. It's pretty easy to just breeze on by, but if you just lock yourself into civilian for a lot of the time, you're not going to have the most fun in the game. I guess unless you just want to map paint forever, which in that case, yeah, sure, you can map paint real easy, but at the same time, at that point, just open MS Paint up. I do think one of the most fun things you can do in this game is saving a unwinnable situation that you may find yourself in and coming out on top. It's hard, it's a bit of a challenge, but you know, you do feel rewarded at the end. And I'm going to be real with you, you ain't going to find that on civilian difficulty with all these green bonuses. But I do agree. I don't think this is a hot take in many regard though, but I think you should at least try and challenge yourself. You know, you can do better and have more fun in this game. Unless it's a specific scenario you really want to map paint, and if that case that's how you have fun, fine. Okay, not a hot take. Do whatever you want in the game. It's a video game. It's made to have fun in. I do think, though, that the veteran and elite difficulties are just pointless. These are absolutely horrendous. It's just not fun at all. Okay, we have two hot takes in one here. Battle for the Bosphorus is actually pretty good, and Navy is actually really fun and easy to understand. It just looks scary because of much of the research. Also, here's an extra one. Japan's focus tree sucks. Hot take, I know, right? I have 1,300 hours, and I literally have never played Japan. Please, it needs an update because I'm about to have to get the Japanese achievements. You know, okay, I don't want to say Battle for the Bosphorus is the worst DLC released at this point. It's definitely not. I mean, Graveyard of Empires is right there. And I do agree you can have fun in Battle for the Bosphorus. I actually came around a bit to the Greece tree. I don't think it's good, but you can have fun in it. I don't think it's amazing, but it's not atrocious. The most annoying part about the Greek focus tree is it just runs out really quickly. As soon as you say you know, if we're doing the Byzantine path here, we go down here, blah, 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 you have your fight with Turkey, boom, you've formed the Byzantines. That's it. There's nothing else to do by your economy tree. There's no more expansion. No more inner workings, anything like that. There is nothing for you to do after you conquer the Turkish. Now, of course, I do know you get all the decisions to reintegrate land, but you don't get war goals on that stuff. You have to just manually justify, where I think that is a major waste. Now, Bulgaria is definitely the strongest and best focus tree in this selection. I mean, it is a little bit samey with forming the Balkan Federation, and a lot of this stuff down here is shared, but I think it is definitely the most fun you can have in the Balkans. Honestly, it's probably the best tree down here in terms of power and fun. But where I will not listen to this hot take is Turkey. Turkey is just horrendous, and I don't know for the life of me why they just don't go in and just knock even more time off a lot of these focus trees and split this whole part of the tree, potentially having all this at the bottom separate, because it's just so long and bad. And then on top of that, I don't think the avenues of expansion are even that good. I mean, you can demand a whole bunch of land from the British. They can say no, and you can't demand any land from the French or whatever, I think. I can't remember specifically. I haven't played it in a while, but it's a bit of a mess. So I do half agree with Battle for the Bosphorus is pretty good. Bulgaria, I think, is a really good focus tree. Definitely the best down the bunch. For some unknown reason, they just made Bulgaria the best there. And then Greece comes second, and the Turkish tree is just horrendous. I don't like it in the slightest. But that is not a objective truth. Some people, probably all the Turkish people that watch my video over in Berlin, they're live tweeting right now that the Turkish tree is the best tree in the game. But actually, no, I think even the Turkish player base probably want a better tree, and you definitely deserve one, because this ain't that good. Second hot take here, Navy, actually really fun and easy to understand. And yeah, it is. It is super easy and fun, especially if you're starting off with no Navy. It's fun to just make a Navy. I did a video where I think I was beating the game with World War I tech as Russia or something, and I just used the starting destroyers and cruisers and had a really good, powerful Navy. It is capable for you to have fun with Navy in this game, and it doesn't require a lot of the technology. You just gotta learn it. And the bottom part about Japan there, that's not a hot take, that is a truth nuke. And good luck with those achievements, because you're going to need it. Okay, here we go. Real hot take. I feel like the reworked German focus tree could have been better. And yeah, alright, anything could be better, alright? Anything. anything in this game could be made better to some standard, but I think compared to what the German focus tree was, this was an amazing upgrade. It gives you so much to do as Germany, and even just avoiding war and going for the alt history path, there is so much in this game now to do as Germany. Like, it's actually insane how much there is in here. And I do think a little bit of it can be finicky, like, you know, the whole inner circle could be a little bit, I think it could have been better. It is not exactly how I'm assuming they wanted it to be, with everyone fighting for power. I think this should have been a little bit less automated, potentially. You have to actually pick who gets in where, but a bit more aggressively, potentially. You know, that could have been done better. You know, things like the 4-year plan, whilst I don't do it a lot and actually going for autarky, it is really fun in a weird way to actually have, you know, the self-imposed time limit, and if you don't do well, oh my god, your economy collapses. I think that's good. Although, obviously, I think a lot of people just go prioritize economic growth. It puts that whole time limit out of the way. You don't have to worry about it. But yeah, there is just so much to do in here for a German focus tree that I do agree that, you know, the German focus tree could have been better, but for what it was, you know, it's good. It's good. But, you know, people probably disagree with me. They've got like their 500 different Germany mods with 5,000 different more focus trees, and, you know, they've got the historically accurate German flag, which you've got to play without. But for me, I think for a vanilla focus tree, this hits it right on the head of the nail there. Just like the Italian tree, I really like the Italian tree. This is of similar quality, if not better, in my opinion. Super events are actually cool, and I think they should be incorporated into the base game with ones for things like World War II because, you know, I know Japanese Pacific. I disagree so much. You know, which was, yeah, we'll start off as a gimmick in, like, one mod, okay? It just spread like a plague throughout the land. Super events are in everything now. And, you know, yeah, I will agree. Maybe the event pop-ups in base Hoi 4 are a little bit underwhelming, especially for something big happening. But I don't want to just be playing the game and then just get my ears blown out by music or a big pop-up that lasts a little bit too long. If you're going, you know, at your own pace and you want to slowly play the game and enjoy and really get into maybe potentially the RP of it, sure, I get it. If it was a toggleable option, sure, I'd turn it off every time. But for me, super events, they're just a bit annoying, especially if you're recording. I can see if you enjoy it for like the, you know, when you're playing, you really want to get into it for like a first time. But I think after a while, a lot of people will probably just click off it like they do a normal event anyway, but they'll be stuck with the music in the background. I don't know. I could be wrong. Obviously, I have a bias because I record. So when copyrighted music just gets blasted at me randomly at 100% volume, it's annoying. But I don't know. You guys tell me. Are you pro super event? Or are you anti super event? You know, I'm not the guy to really go to here. I have obviously got to deal with the recording aspect, and usually a lot of the time these mods put in a lot of copyrighted music, which means I have to mute them regardless. And I just think realistically, if they put super events into the game, maybe I would just ignore them. I would just click. Popped up, click. Oh, super event, click. back to watching the arrow go beep beep beep. But hey, you tell me. I actually am pretty interested to see what the split here is on these super events. Okay, you know, I've saved some of the worst, most egregious ones that I can't even tell are real or someone's baiting here. But just for the last few here, we'll do a couple more of the ones that I found to be just a real hot take. I think a lot of them before this are lukewarm. A lot of people can be 50-50. But these ones, I imagine we're going to have a 5% vocal majority. My favorite focus tree is the Swiss. It has very few mutually exclusive focus, so you can swap back and forth between both ideologies and with the balance of power complete the vast majority of the focuses and get a ton of buffs. I think your hard drive should be checked. Okay, no, I'm just kidding. You know, I can understand, all right, the appeal of the Swiss tree. For me, though, it is just annoying flip-flopping around like that. Everything is... I get it. It's an experimental focus tree. If every focus tree in the game was exactly the same, the game would be, well, like it is currently, actually. But yeah, I do understand, you know, why they wanted to try something different, and I do appreciate that they are willing to try something different, and I'm glad they did it for a nation like Switzerland and not the Germans, so it's, you know, out the way. But for me, Switzerland just has too many annoying mechanics. If it was just one or two, all right, if you just had to deal with the focus rate, sure, okay, you could flip-flop back and forward, Sure, but you also have the balance of power. Then on top of that, you also have the advisors that you have to randomly get in and then get selected on their own. And you have the election events. And then you also have to deal with the army. Do you actually have an army, or do you have the Swiss Guard, the militia? There is too many annoyances in the Swiss tree for me to ever want to play them. If there were just one or two of these things, I get it, all right? It'd be a pretty fun tree to be able to do so much. You can have true neutrality by just flip-flopping everywhere, but there's just too many finicky, annoying gimmicks that just make me hate the Swiss tree. I think the national focus system has been a massive impediment to the game, and the gameplay will be fundamentally bad until it's gotten rid of. Unlike the EU4 focus, okay, don't bring up EU4 in this already, you've already lost me. You actually have to do things to instantly complete your focuses. 9% of the focuses in Hoi 4 are time-gated, meaning the most important thing you do is waiting, and the focus tree dictates the pace of gameplay rather than vice versa. Now, I don't agree in the slightest with this. I think for a game that is time limited, all right, and you do have to work around the pace of the historical setting, that the focus tree system works really well. But, okay, hear me out, where I do agree with you is that it is annoying to have to specify what your country does a lot, and you are super limited when a lot of the things, say historically, that happened were happening at the same time. So in a way, I do think it kind of limits a lot of gameplay, especially when focus trees are getting larger and larger. But there are kind of inclinations that Paradox may be going paths potentially to remedy this, like they have done with the inner circle over here, or, you know, even with the shared focus trees, where a lot of stuff now gets shared between countries or gets automated. But I do think the focus tree system works really well in Hoi 4 for the most part, but may be coming to its limitations, in particular with these trees that just get larger and larger, and a lot of stuff you need to do and you really have to pick between, and sometimes it can be very tight getting what you need to be, you know, you need to have a fun game done. You know, and potentially, if you had an issue with this, and Paradox eventually, if they just didn't want to do, you know, smaller focus tree times, like 35-day focuses anymore, they could have more systems like the inner circle where things do just go on their own and they go tick down as the game goes through. But I do think in Hoi 5, whenever that may come out, this system will be getting reworked in many different ways, because there are limitations to it, and I think the 70-day focus is a relic of the past, I could tell you that much. Especially when trees are just getting larger and larger, and a lot of stuff is getting spread out. Stuff that you really do need to do, like getting your extra research slots, or even as the Germans, getting your like military in command, stuff like that. So I can see some stuff getting reworked, but I would 100% take this over the EU4 focus trees any day. Now, I left this one for last for a reason. Any mod that changes the default UI just makes it worse rather than better. The Neon Cold War UI especially is a abomination. I don't think this is a hot take. This is a truth nuke. And I honestly could not agree more. Mods like TNO, and I think there was even Red Flood, I actually didn't like the UIs of at all, because whilst, yeah, they look good, they fit the style of the game, they're just not practical. I'm assuming, you know, they're probably not made with anything other than, you know, a glancing look at, you know, in terms of how they were made. So they were just made to, oh yeah, well, that looks cool. But then as soon as you realize you have to look at them for a lot of the damn time, that's when the problems set in. I think a lot of the UI changes are made just like, oh yeah, this would look cool as a still image right here. And then past that, we don't care. It's pure vibes and aura first, practicality second. Which is why, for the most part, a lot of UIs in games and stuff are made to be, you know, pretty easy to distinguish, especially a game like Hoi 4, where you need to be able to distinguish stuff pretty quickly. You need to know what that is and what the background is, and they shouldn't blend together. Obviously, though, it's a stylistic choice, but it also is just a horrendous, impractical choice. Having a bland UI that has a little bit of style to it, you know, it's very basic, but it is very easy to distinguish what's going on, is way better than just pure aura and vibes, especially when it actually results in you having to play the game. I do need to play the game. That is the problem. And if you're on like, you know, a pretty good monitor at any point, it is not helped at all. So yeah, I think whilst it may look cool, you know, as a still image, anything bar that, mods like TNO and stuff like that, it just horrendously impractical. Absolutely horrendous. I think if you just toned it down, and whilst I know you understand, you know, you like the neon and stuff like that, it's horrendous to look at for a long period of time. Anything but a passing glance, horrendous. You know, I'm sure there's loads of people that are diehard defenders of, like, you know, mods like TNO or Red Flood or whatever that have these big, huge UI changes that hurt your eyeballs and be like, oh, you just got filtered. Okay, you got filtered. This mod's for me now. Well, guess what? You can keep it. I don't want it. I'd rather keep my eyesight. But yeah, that's all our hot takes for today. I think we got a few good ones in there, a few truth nukes, like I said, and I'm going to read the comments as well. What do you think your hot takes are? Do you have something hotter than what I have talked about today? I'm assuming you do, because some people do like to just rage bait, huh?